Okay, it's 11:15. We're going to get started. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for Financial Clinical Interventions in a New Online World of Gambling. My name is Elizabeth Toomey. I am from NYCPG. You'll see on my tag that it says staff. So if during this presentation you have any questions or technical difficulties, you can put it in the chat box and I'll help you or get you the help that you need. Today we have Judy Bechtold with us, who will be presenting. Thanks for joining us, Jody.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I apologize. I realize the title doesn't match what Elizabeth just read, but I can assure you the PowerPoint and today's presentation is really about finances in this new world of gambling. And so looking forward to getting started. Please feel free to put anything in the chat. I have the window open and make it as interactive as possible for the next hour. So as Elizabeth said, I'm Jody Bechtold, and I am a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm coming to you live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania right now. I hold an ICGC level 2 and a BACC from the International Gambling Counselor Certification Board. I also serve as vice president for that board. I'm the CEO of a group practice called the Better Institute. We serve all of Pennsylvania now that we are able to do teletherapy. And I'm also an advisory board member for GAMBAN and a member of the National Council on Problem Gambling. Really excited that exactly almost this time last year, Alyssa Wilson and I published a book, The Gambling Disorder Treatment Handbook. So if you haven't gotten a chance to pick it up or anything, it's available on Amazon. I will be referencing several things from that book, mostly in the finances chapter, obviously. If you'd like to join the mailing list, I promise I don't send many emails, but I send some really fun ones here and there and get some dialogue going. So you can just hover over the QR code with your phone and join my mailing list. So let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to discuss this morning. Really want to focus on understanding and integrating client finances into therapy for gambling disorder. There's a lot to understand in terms of financial protection, and I'm going to get into kind of budgets and restitution plans in a new tech way that we have, we can engage in now, especially with the teletherapy and being able to reach people without being in person or physically in person, and just briefly cover some financial tools. I pulled this from the internet just to talk about where New York is. New York is now one of 33 states and counting that is in some form of looking at expansion of legalized sports betting and online gambling. And so, I come from Pennsylvania, where we have been doing this since before the pandemic started. And I can tell you that it really does take off. And so any of you working with individuals, treating individuals with gambling disorder, you can definitely expect to see an increase in a particular group of individuals that are more likely to engage in sports betting than we've ever seen before. But this just really shows that the mobile part of technology is really where we're going to see a lot more gambling happening. And the mobile is also where a lot of the finance stuff is happening. So my hope today is that you walk away with a few new techniques and tools in your clinical tool chest as we move forward in this new world of sports betting and online sports betting and online gambling. So like I say, think mobile, right? Finances is not a new topic for all of us that have been working in the gambling disorder treatment world, but it is new in terms of how we are going to treat individuals that have a gambling disorder or those that might be at risk or problematic, right? And so keep thinking mobile, keep thinking tech. What we talk about today, a lot of it's coming from the chapter Finances in our book, and we always start with a quote. Money is supposed to hurt when you spend it, right? So think about that in today's world. All of us are, deal with this because we are doing everything, through credit cards, debit cards, virtual money, just even the way that we could order food and have it delivered at our place of residence without ever pulling out cash and handing it to another person. But money really is supposed to hurt when we spend it. And when things are put in place that we are much further away from our money, right, then we tend to not really feel that hurt as much. And that hurt is supposed to make us say, do I really want this or not? Do I need this or not? Right. And so we all can subscribe to this quote and keep ourselves in check, not only just with our clients, but how are we dealing with money? How are we handling finances ourselves? And that really is why we start with you, right? We want to think about, do you currently talk about finances with your clients? So please put stuff in the chat. If you have been dealing with finances and are, confident or not confident, just fill up the chat box as much as possible. I want to know where are most of you in terms of the dealing with finances, right? Because we all have potential countertransference issues. And what I'm really focused on with that is there was, lots of discussion around how can I help my clients with finances if my own finances aren't in the best shape, right? And what potentially are the ways to deal with that countertransference, because we know that finances are the drug screen for gambling. It's a really great statement and perfect. I love seeing what everybody's putting in the chat. This is great, really seasoned audience. So again, I'm not going to share too many new things with you. I'm going to share new ways to do what you already do. And so what does it mean to be financially literate? Have you ever said to a client, I want you to have a better relationship with money because of the whole, gambling money relationship? I want you to learn to be financially literate. So this, term financially literate is really at a basic level, it means to have knowledge to manage money. And we know that we want clients to be able to plan, to manage, and to understand the value of money, right? And so that we can break down the distorted thinking that goes along with gambling money. And when you think about financially literate and that good relationship with money, you can also think about it in a couple different lenses. One might be through using the evidence-based theory of ACT and money. Right? Accepting their relationship with money, learning to tolerate financial shame, and understanding what it is and what is not in their control. So if we looked from ACT, that might be one way of thinking of it. If we look from CBT and money, we want to help clients understand how their financial thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are interrelated. Right. And last, if we think about mindfulness and money, really encouraging that mindfulness when engaging in any financial transactions. So that's a big goal, to really go to that degree, that length of helping clients become financially literate. And I don't know about you, but I know that oftentimes I don't even get to still work with a client when they have finally reached that financial literacy or that healthy relationship with money. They're already off, my caseload by then. Okay. And so thank you. Someone put, I love that question. Do you have a good relationship with money? Right. Perfect thing for all of us to keep in check. So great. Love this. We have known that we have to be very careful with the timing of our interventions, especially related to finances, so that we don't inadvertently also provide a bailout, right? And so we're talking about clients coming in, specifically family members and loved ones that are in that crisis state, and they are very focused on the finances, and they are very stressed about the state of the finances. And if we help too quickly in too many areas related to finances, we potentially could be providing a bailout. And that's a very delicate balance to strike with the individual with the gambling disorder versus the family member. And so I like to just remind us that, everyone participating today, think about, when do you talk about finances? How often do you talk about finances? And what is it like when someone comes to you in that first session and all they want to focus on is the money, right? And what are kind of your approaches and your techniques thus far in how you manage that? As we move into more and more of a tech and mobile space, we're seeing even more of that instant and that impulse coming through than we saw when it was more of a brick and mortar interaction with gambling, right? And so keep thinking about how we time that intervention and what that might look like. So we're going to quickly go over these 5 concepts about closing the doors, understanding the meaning of money. I like to briefly talk about bankruptcy. I'm always focused on control, and what are some money protection strategies. So in our book, we talk about closing all the doors. This to me is a concept that's more of a therapeutic approach. I use this term, this phrase with clients. And I say, I view doors that are open as access to gambling. And we look at it not only, ways to gamble, but the finances that support the gambling. So how many doors are there for that particular individual and family system? And what can we do to close those doors? Now, again, this concept is really approaching things from an abstinence perspective, but you can still talk about certain doors that maybe are better closed when you do harm reduction. And so, just think about it that way. If the client still wants to do some sort of responsible gambling, what are some of the doors that would increase harm if they're still open, and maybe use the term and the phrase that way with those particular clients. And, this is an oldie but goodie slide talking about money. So I have gamblers in quotes, not to label anyone, but just really to kind of just zero in that people with a gambling disorder really do think there are 2 kinds of money: real money and gambling money. I often put my hands out and I say, there's real money and there's gambling money. And clients will go, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. And if you're like me, when I first got into this field, I was like, really? I thought there was just money. And so this is helpful to revisit with your clients and really call this out. This is part of the distortions, the cognitive distortions that you can revisit over and over again. Because when we understand their view of gambling money, we then can understand what doors we need to close, as well as helping people working towards a better relationship with money. You can't have a healthy relationship with money when you still have 2 kinds of money, right? And so just especially family members benefit from understanding this as well, because they just have money, not the 2 kinds, right? So again, not teaching anything new to majority of you, but thinking of ways to talk about it with clients, because you're going to get a lot more individuals that are younger right? This sports betting and online is going to attract a younger, new group. Okay. And someone's asking if you can have gambling as a budget category. That would only be if you're doing harm reduction. It would not be if you're doing abstinence. So hopefully I can get to that by the end of the workshop today. If not, put that back in the chat and we'll revisit at the end. And yes, I also agree, Tony, that GA's pressure relief group worksheet is fantastic. And, you know, there are times when recommending a pressure relief group is absolutely the best thing to do. I also advocate, though, that we as the treating provider have that confidence in dealing with clients' finances so that we're really helping treat the whole person and have as many touch points as possible. So when we think about bankruptcy, we know historically that bankruptcy really did not modify the behavior. And so if you don't already, I recommend you include asking about bankruptcy in your intake with clients, right? Because you'd be surprised to understand how many that have filed bankruptcy in the past. You should then ask, how many times have they filed bankruptcy? Because many people will have reported more than one time before the changes to the bankruptcy laws. We know GA's view is that bankruptcy is viewed as a bailout. And I think clients need to understand that view and what that looks like. But one thing I have found is that there are two kinds of bankruptcy. There's Chapter 7 and there's Chapter 13. Chapter 7 is the one we know hasn't really modified behavior because it kind of took away people's responsibility for paying back the debt that they had incurred. However, Chapter 13 is very different, and it does not take away the responsibility. This could potentially be one tool in your toolbox for some use cases where individuals maybe have so much credit card debt and the interest rates are so high that with the income and their earning potential, they would never get above water. And Chapter 13, you would absolutely refer to a bankruptcy attorney. But really, I've had a couple of client cases where this was very beneficial after they had taken many, many other steps because they just could not ever project when they would be able to pay off the debts due to gambling that were on credit cards and other loans. So Chapter 13, in a sense, will freeze the interest rates so that people can truly pay back the full amount that they owe and that it is overseen by a court so that there's no way of them getting around paying this back, but they actually have the ability to pay it back. And so when we circle back to that financial literacy and a better relationship with money, you can understand where some individuals might benefit from Chapter 13. So add that to your tool belt, okay? If you need to. And you're right, Stephen, thank you. Nice to see you. Bankruptcy does not eliminate illegal debt, right? And so when we are putting together a full composition, a full makeup of someone's finances, you are going to have to include that illegal debt. And, you know, I think that people in GA and pressure relief are the ones that are so well equipped to help people when they're determining the illegal debt, if it's in pretty large amounts, right? But overall, what we're talking about today, it's not a one size fits all. Please attend to each individual as the true individual that they are. I like to focus on control. We know that so much about gambling is about control until completely out of control, right? And so sometimes giving clients like a metaphor to understand it so that even in a session, we can say, I feel the control in the room. I understand. Do you feel that odorless, colorless gas that has just creeped in? And I bring this up because if your experiences are similar to mine, I found that when we really get into the finances with people, then we feel more control showing up. They're trying to control more again, right? And we really want to understand and be able to call it out so that it helps them notice when they're trying to control, especially around finances, right? So just being able to bring that up is a therapeutic technique in and of itself, but definitely shows up with finances. So then we help clients learn to manage when they're trying to control. What does that feel like? Where does it reside in your body, right? Really get them to feel the feels of what's going on when we're talking so much about finances, and being able to keep bringing this up as we need to. So then we move, into understanding more about different financial protection strategies. And again, this is just a 1-hour workshop. We're not going to be able to cover all in-depth strategies the way you do clinically with your clients. But this is a great picture to show that people have very different paths that they may need to take related to their finances and their overall gambling recovery. And so really helping people understand that it's not just this formula that is rinse and repeat over and over again. So we kind of break it into the two different paths. Who are you working with? Are you working with the partner, spouse, and family? Or are you working with the individual that has the gambling disorder, right? Because your timing of your interventions and the things that you might recommend, while many are the same, working with family can be very different, right? So when we think about partner and family and spouse, right, we want to better understand, where's their anxiety? Are they in a state of crisis? Anything that we can do to help them regain some sense of stability, right? And so I really recommend for people that if you can team up with another group of clinicians so that one person works with the family member and the other person works with the individual with the gambling disorder, then you're ultimately able to treat the whole family. Right. So we want to really try and get that family member as much support as possible without feeling like we have to also be the one doing that while also treating the individual with the gambling disorder. But there can be confusion, right? Because if the family member is told to do a financial budget and restitution plan, and the individual with the gambling disorder is told to do the same thing, are they getting conflicting information? And so this is why it's helpful to team up with other individual clinicians and start to really partner and collaborate well together. We also know that family members, I know especially with parents of adult children, they can be very focused on paying off the debt and doing it quickly because they have anxiety over the potential interest rates and all the interest that's being charged, right? And so we have to really help mitigate and manage that real sweet spot of just the right amount of pressure for the right amount of time and making a payment manageable, but making a payment where you don't have too much disposable income left over, is a very interesting dance and a unique and individual one at that. So think about how are you doing this, right? When you have a family member, and are you including, making sure that they're doing this together? Are you attending to any of the issues that might be related to intimate partner violence, cultural differences, all of those things, right? So it can be quite complex, but yet it's such a necessary focus. So one thing that I like to do with family, most of the time I'm treating the individual with the gambling disorder. And so I immediately start the conversation with my client about how to get the loved one to attend a therapy session, right? I want that to happen early. And then I want them to feel that they can come back and join another session with me and my client. I really advocate when I do get the opportunity to interact with family that I want them to seek therapy for themselves and stay in therapy for themselves, because they're going to get healthier, which is also going to help the client and the whole family system. I talk about the importance of developing and reviewing the financial budget and restitution plan and try and remove any confusion about who's supposed to do it, how to do it together if it's appropriate, and things like that. I have also experienced over the years, which many of you can probably agree with, that I stress to family members to not ever let up on focusing on finances. Don't get comfortable and complacent years into it, right? Too often we see that there is an avoidable relapse because family members got complacent and confident that the individual that used to gamble could handle finances again all by themselves. And so again, I'm saying some pretty bold statements, and I know that again, as treating individuals, we'll have to modify what I'm saying to fit that system. But it is avoidable in many cases when we stress to a family member to please stay engaged, if not, owning it. What does accountability look like for a family member, right? In this new world of technology, there are a lot of opportunities to be accountable and to hold the individual with a gambling disorder in that accountability. So we'll really kind of explore what that could be. Is it access to the bank account? Is it, that we sit down and pay all the bills together every month so that we really do see money coming in, money going out, and everything is accounted for. If it's parents of an adult child, what does that accountability look like while we're still trying to successfully launch that adult child into adulthood? But overall, how to not continue to play detective, right? Not log into the bank account 3 times a day, every day. Be able to have some sense of, peace of mind and, know that they have enough structures in place to be able to accommodate this. Okay. Now, as we switch over to a person with a gambling disorder, right, we're going to see some more active techniques that we can employ. I like to refer to the 3 main doors: time, access, and money. And I find that access and money are individually addressed as well as addressed together. And so sometimes it's not quite so clear and siloed. So let's take a deeper dive into what that is. Again, if we're going to review all the doors, right, we want to look at all the doors that the person has where there's access to money to continue to gamble. And how do we close all those doors while at the same time addressing if there's any gender issues, safety issues, what are the family dynamics, the cultural issues? These are the standard ones that we all need to attend to. And, absolutely related to any type of trauma or any type of abuse, to take that into account. But that, I believe, the whole trauma discussion is much more deserving of a full workshop itself. So I'm not going to talk about it, but that doesn't mean I don't think it's important. But now the challenge is, how do you also attend to the technology that gives access to money? And how do you understand those generational characteristics? So generational characteristics, how confident are you in working with Gen Zs, the globals, and the millennials, and the Gen Xers, and the baby boomers? All 4 generations can potentially be on your caseload at any given time. And they are very different generational characteristics in how they engage in gambling and how they have access to money. So the younger generations, you need to get curious and ask a lot more about how they would gamble and how they got money to gamble, right? There's more apps out there. Cash App is a big one right now, the Venmo, the PayPal. We'll talk about those in a little bit. But if you don't already ask those in your intake, I want you to start asking. And you don't have to know that much about them. All you have to do is be curious and ask them to tell you. Tell me as if I'm watching you gamble. If I was watching a video, what would I see? What would you be doing? And get them to describe step by step. Okay. So if any of you, put in the chat, if you're familiar, have clients that are already teaching you more about these different money apps and ways to gamble, put that in the chat as well. So let's kind of combine the two, access to gamble and access to money. Okay. We want that layering approach in addressing access. We want to really understand the ways people gamble, the way individuals engage with gambling, and then find ways to limit or close access, not only with money, but also to the gambling itself, right? And yes, thank you. Also about crypto. Perfect. Okay. So when we think about this, we know that we are never going to prevent somebody from gambling if they really want to. And I like to put that out there so that in some regards, it kind of takes a little bit of the chase out of it for the client, that if they really do want to gamble, they'll find ways to do it, even though we're going to recommend several strategies to limit access and the use of money and the access to gamble, right? So right when we start talking about limiting access to money, limiting access to gambling together, the control is going to show up. So notice when it shows up, be able to call it out with your client and talk about it and process the control, process the feelings that go along with that. And, that awareness is so important. And we don't want to go too fast and make this more of like a task and a checklist. We really want to spend the time to understand why they're feeling the need to control, what is going on for them, emotionally, cognitively, any of those things, right? So someone's asking if we can give an example, right? So let's talk about control. Let's talk about your finances. And I'm suggesting that you give up access to your bank account and you let your loved one or your partner change the password to your online bank account. And the client might then say, I don't know if we need to go that far. And right there's some control. And so being able to just gently talk through that and say, if you really want to start to rebuild trust, if you really want to stay committed to not gambling, we're going to have to make some pretty bold decisions early. I'm not saying this is lifetime, but let's just talk about it initially right now. What are some things that you can do to give up access to your own money, right? Because you're trying to really achieve recovery and abstinence and get back on that recovery road with rebuilding trust. So hopefully that's a good example right there. We do recommend doing a budget, right? And many of you already put in the chat that you do this. This is one of many models that you can follow, but we're really trying to understand the debt, clarifying that debt, right? How much of that is gambling debt versus just having an unhealthy relationship with money? How much of that gambling debt is illegal or owed to family and friends or coworkers that's really not, through another lending company or anything like that? And then what are all the expenses, right? Being able to get people to really list out what their expenses are on a week to week or month to month. And then what kind of income do you have coming in from your employment? Do you need to look at additional employment? And let's come up with that budget. This is also where then we start to build the debt repayment. How are you going to repay this debt on a monthly basis, month to month, without foregoing paying someone, saying they don't really need their money, because we want that accountability and we want that responsibility, right? and keeping as many doors closed as possible with a money protection plan. All right. So how many of you will do budgeting in the session versus giving it as a homework, right? So go ahead and put in the chat if you do homework or in session, because what I'm finding with many individuals that don't have a healthy relationship with money, they tend to say they'll do the homework and then they don't. So great. A lot of people are saying in session. I agree. I try and do both. But I think, again, if we attend to the younger generation, we're going to have to see if homework really works. Don't let it go too long. Okay. The other thing we might find is that by doing it in session, we're able to then incorporate more clinical tools in the session than if they're doing it by themselves or with a loved one as homework, right? Having family involvement is critical, and understanding, right, what are the pros and cons or the barriers to doing all of this. I had a client one time, very well educated, multiple degrees. And when he came to my office, I asked him to prepare a budget. Now, it wasn't silly of me to assume that he knew how to use Excel based on his educational training. And he came in and handed me Post-it notes. Right. And so I knew right there, he was struggling to deal with the financial aspects of his gambling. He did not want to put it all on a spreadsheet because he didn't want to look at all of it. That's a great example of when doing in session is going to be more helpful. Okay. Right. And so just really understanding how to get people involved. You guys have all had your standard ways of doing things with budgets and restitutions. Now I want you to think of the younger generation. Are they going to do homework? Are they going to print it? Are they going to email it? How are they going to get it to you? Okay. What I've noticed is the younger generation will do very well using Google Sheets. And Google Sheets is the online version of Excel. It just happens to be not Microsoft, it's Google. And what I do with clients is I share screen, especially if we're doing teletherapy, or I will have my computer open and we will do it in session. And Google Sheets is real time. And so when clients then go home and add more to the Google Sheet, you can still see it because you're both sharing. Okay. I've also had young individuals where they need the accountability with their parents. And so then I've added a family member to have access to this same Google Sheet. And this is super helpful. I can't tell you how easy it is to then pull up the budget from one session to the next and keep talking about finances, because we don't have this kind of task one and done. I did the budget. Now it's filed away. It now is a tool in and of itself in therapy. So if you're not familiar with Google Sheets, I urge you to, get curious, play around with it. If you want to email me and we go back and forth, I'd be happy to do that. But really understand Google Sheets. You're going to really meet the younger generation where they are best met in doing it this way. Now, at the same time, you might have an older client, older aged client that doesn't know the first thing about Google Sheets, is very comfortable with Excel and is comfortable emailing an Excel file back and forth. Okay. Just make sure with your emails that you can do, it's encrypted, right? Where Google Sheets, I have a business associate agreement with Google Workspace. And so all the Google Sheets that I initiate are HIPAA protected. So you think about that. Okay. I'll talk about TrueLink Financial in a moment. But I do want you to just really think about how this new technology is super helpful in the way that you already have been doing things in your session. Okay. So here's what using Google Sheets looks like. This is an example from a client. Doesn't it look like Excel? It just is a tab in a Chrome browser instead of software installed on a computer. Okay. And this particular family and the client that I was working with, these are hypothetical numbers, but to illustrate, you can see that there's debt and gambling debt. So there's credit card debt, and then down below, there's loans to father and friends as gambling debt. Have outlined several expenses in column B, have given some numbers to them, and started to do a formula. And we're looking at this net income at the bottom. And we see that some months, like in column H, there's a lot more disposable income, and that's because of daycare. So it looks something like, okay, we've got to figure out how to reduce the monthly income so that there's not too much sitting in the bank account, and at the same time, still paying on all the debts that we owe. What about pulling those numbers all the way across, noticing some things that are happening, and notice the 2 months in the summer where they don't have daycare expenses, and what would we do with that additional money at the bottom? So this is just a mere exercise in getting clients to start to talk through planning, managing, and understanding their money, right? And attending to the fact that they need to make payments, which is the restitution part of it, on all of their debt, right? Not just deciding one or two people to pay back. So hopefully this illustration kind of gives you an idea of some things you could do. This is an example where the wife and the father, because they owe the father money, were all part of this shared Google sheet, and they could see all this information and make comments and suggestions if they thought that they, should do monthly payments differently. Right. And so again, hopefully that's a new way of using the same kind of tool or spreadsheet that you're familiar with. Clients, younger clients also have that kind of feeling of despair that they're never going to get all of their gambling debt or any of their debt paid off. And I found that it's also helpful to just run numbers as an illustration because we're trying to attend to that control, that it's never going to get any better. If I just gambled one more time and won, I could solve it more than if I made these small monthly payments over and over again. So here's an example of helping a client say, if you owed over $42,000, how many years do you think it would take to pay off? Now that $700 is from the previous sheet of all the money that was being spent. Okay. The highlighted yellow. So if I show you here, all the yellow here totals $700 a month. So that's where that came from. Then I just put a date down and say, let's just say that every month you're paying $700. How long would I have to run the date down till you are paid off, or technically paid off? And so if you're not familiar with Excel, or it works just the same in Google, you kind of drag the dates down and they just incrementally grow 1 month at a time. Copy the 700 down and then create the formula that with every next payment, that column E is being reduced. And so it would look something like this. I'm dragging the numbers down, and 12/1 of 2026 would be when they would theoretically have almost all of the debt paid off. Now, that is exactly 5 years. And when you put it in terms like that for many individuals, they go, oh, 5 years. Okay. Some might say, oh my gosh, 5 years. And then you have to talk through what is the emotional aspect going on, right? Any of this, but helping people see that when you don't gamble anymore, paying off the debt does have an end in sight, as long as you don't gamble again, right? And just being able to keep those different phrases and help people with their thoughts around money and the desire or the impulse to want to gamble again to solve all of it, right? Being able to tell them, if you gamble, you're only going to make this worse. We know that from the fact that you are already in debt this much money. Right now, I don't know if you are familiar with TrueLink Financial, but this is a prepaid Visa card, very different than just a gift card. Okay. And so check it out if you don't already know about it. But what's interesting is this particular card, I have found with the younger generation, still gives them that autonomy, that the card has their name on it. It looks just like a credit or debit card. It acts like one. It, you can use a PIN number, all these things. And then the family member will be able to see all the transactions. So they aren't coming, because most young generation doesn't come back and hand a receipt. And so here, by using this, you're able to really show that accountability. And, I've helped family members set these up because sometimes they're still very overwhelmed. And so I get it started for them and get all the settings taken care of and then hand it off to them. But here's why I like this card so much. And this is the person with the card does not have access to this part of the website. But notice right here, it will block gambling and casino transactions or other financial transactions, right? There's lots of different toggles here. Blocks pawn shops. If your client also doesn't drink, you could potentially block the bars and liquor stores, right? So here they're able to still have access to money, but they've got some structures in place. And so here's the accountability, here's the autonomy, all right? And everybody has oversight, right? And so the way it works is that you choose after you've done a budget, how much money is part of their spending for the week or the 2 weeks. And my recommendation is that you transfer money onto the card on a weekly basis. And the reason I say that is because we want them to start to learn to live on a weekly basis with the money that is given to them that's within their budget. Even if they get paid every 2 weeks, we want to make sure that week to week, they have to live within their budget. All right, so there's some good questions in the chat. The name of the card is called TrueLink Financial. You could get cash back like a debit card, or you can turn that feature off. It's pretty impressive. I'm just giving you a quick highlight of it. And then you automatically add funds each week coming from a bank account, right? And so a loved one, again, could do this for the individual with the gambling disorder and have money deposited on a weekly basis. The reason I also find this helpful with the younger generation is they're so used to instant, just Zelle me money, just throw money into my bank account. And this is not a fast solution. And it slows everything down. Okay. And so you're able to really help people attend to this much better. Some other questions coming in. This is not just for people with a gambling disorder. This card has been used for people that are older adults or individuals with maybe intellectual disabilities and things, but they still deserve to have access to their own money. It's just a way of safeguarding. And so there's tons of categories in here that, like you said, why block hearing aids? It's just a feature that the company has used possibly for those that might be experiencing Alzheimer's or dementia. And they have blocked that so that they can't spend, thousands of dollars trying to buy new hearing aids when the ones they have are just fine. So again, this attends to more than just individuals with a gambling disorder. Okay, here is where you would then add a family member, and then they would be able to take over the entire account. TrueLink, I believe, is $10 a month, well within the budget for individuals that have spent a lot more than that during a gambling episode. Okay. And so, really think about how this might be a tool that you can use with family and clients. This is not a fast tool, it takes weeks to get set up. This is something that you set up early and get it working, and it's for the long haul. I still have clients that have been using this for 3 years. I had a woman who I worked with on and off for several years. The last time she came to see me, she said, I finally have to surrender my finances. This is very difficult for me. By giving her this card, she didn't feel like she completely surrendered. And at her 1-year pinning ceremony, she said, it took me 8 years to get 1 year. And it was when I finally surrendered my finances. So we're really able to see the importance of attending to finances at an individual level. Okay. Now, as we are coming close to the end, we have about 10 more minutes. I'm going to talk about the virtual money, right? And going back to that quote, money is supposed to hurt when you spend it. And we all know that it doesn't hurt when we use our credit cards, right? It doesn't hurt nearly the same as when we have to spend cash and hand over cash to someone. So these are 4 of many that are out there that also allow for that virtual flow of money. Now, someone earlier in the chat mentioned crypto. Absolutely, right? That is something that is really gaining traction, especially with the younger generation and the sports betting. But anything online, you're going to see a lot more crypto. And if you don't know anything about crypto, don't worry. Just ask your client to tell you more about how they use crypto. And they will gladly educate you, and you'll understand from your current knowledge already of treating this disorder that crypto is just very similar to the old days of the coins that were used in the slot machines. It wasn't real money, but it started out as real money, converted to, these coins, and then at some point trying to convert it back to real money, right? So that's probably the simplest way of thinking about crypto. But notice here, PayPal says, there you go. You can do crypto right from PayPal. You can also do it from Venmo. Cash App is a big one. And those are the ones that most of my clients are telling me about. I had a gentleman tell me that he was able to go to a local drugstore, take out cash from the ATM, take the app on his phone for sports betting, say that he wanted to convert, deposit money into his sports betting app. He went to the self-checkout of a drugstore. We're talking about a drugstore, okay? Like a CVS. And he was able to go to the self-checkout, hold up the QR code from the gambling app to the screen. And then it said, please deposit X number of dollars, which was the amount of money he had just taken out of the ATM. So did you follow that? Real money out of the ATM, a QR code on a gambling app, and deposit it into the self-checkout at like a CVS. Would a family member be able to follow that money? Yes, thank you. Scary, right? And so how did I learn this? I just asked. So keep asking and stay curious, and they will tell you. All right. So then we, as we understand all the different ways that people try and gamble, we then talk to them about the triggers. Too much money, not enough money, greatest triggers to gamble, right? Great phrase. Know that. Desperate times require desperate measures. Sometimes after we've done the financial budget and restitution plan, they are feeling desperate. Like these are desperate times. They are feeling out of control, right? Explore all of this with them. What else are they feeling? What else would be triggers? Anxiety is a trigger. Getting nervous about starting a new position, a new job, that could be as much of a trigger, and then to lead to gambling, to self-medicate, right? And so the more we can educate, the better. But when people don't have access to their own money, now they have to feel the feels. Sorry, I didn't mean to go too fast. They have to feel those feelings, and it's our job to really help them process that. Okay. And so did you know you can now get gift cards for DraftKings? I don't know if any of you know that. I was told by someone that they were hanging out at a local drugstore waiting for their prescription to be filled. And they were meandering around, and they went over to the gift card section and saw that you could buy DraftKings gift card in the state that they reside. So what did I do? I did my homework, and I went to my local grocery store. Sorry, I thought I had a picture of it. I went to my local grocery store, and I found that I could do the same thing locally in Pennsylvania. I then put it out to my colleagues, and it does appear that multiple states, this is something that can happen. So we have to, again, if we've cut people off from their money, if they have done self-exclusion, then it doesn't matter because the DraftKings app doesn't work, then they can't do this. But if any of those doors are open, we then can get access to gamble again. DraftKings is one of the big companies that is doing the sports betting. FanDuel and DraftKings are the ones, okay, across many states. So I want you, if nothing else, please stay curious, okay? Because when you're curious, then your clients are teaching you what is happening, how they are using the technology to gamble, and then you're able to use your skills and knowledge to help them close the doors and be on their way to developing a healthier relationship with money and improving those financial literacy skills. So I hope that this was helpful. If there's any questions, we have a couple minutes. You can put it in the chat, or however, Elizabeth, you want people to ask any additional questions. And so thank you so much for your time and for the New York Council and the opportunity to present today.
Jody, thank you so much for the invaluable information. I learned a lot today. Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. We have a couple minutes yet. Or if you would like to unmute yourself and ask a question, feel free.
Yeah. And someone asked the book, the title of the book is real sexy title, The Gambling Disorder Treatment Handbook. So
coming up at 12:30, we have To the Moon, an intro to cryptocurrency. And that will be at 12:30. So stay tuned for that also.
Can you please put up the last slide again?
This one?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, question was, how do you determine who to pay first and second? Again, individual decision, but I have found that I encourage people to pay everyone, even if it's a very, very small amount, even if it is $5, right? And so getting people to be much more accountable for all of their debts is the key. Okay, put that in the chat for anyone. And then the QR code is here for those who want to join the mailing list.
Again, thank you for joining us. And thank you, Jody, for your time today and such great information that you shared with us. The next session will start at 12:30, and that will be To the Moon, an intro to cryptocurrency. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Have a wonderful conference.
Thank you, Jody. Great presentation. Loved it.
Thank you. And I stayed right on time, didn't I, Elizabeth?
You did great. I was watching the participants coming in, so I had to let them in. And a couple times I was like, oh, I gotta let people in because I was so engrossed in what you were talking about. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
I really appreciate it. So good to work with the New York Council. I love all the work I've done thus far. I want to keep doing it. So thank you, Robin. Anybody else from the council?
Safe travels.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Jim. I'm going to stop sharing.
And I'm going to log us off. So thank you and safe travels.
All right. Bye, everyone.